Welcome to another exciting episode of In Conversation with Alethia. I'm your host, Alethia O'Hara Stevenson. In each episode, I sit down with amazing individuals who are doing incredibly inspiring things. The show will educate, it will empower, and it will certainly inspire you. In this episode, I am honored to have an incredible guest. She is no other than Dr. Sogand Zakerhaghighi. So, welcome to In Conversation with Alethia. This is the first time that I get to call you doctor. Welcome.
Yeah, so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. How does it feel to be a doctor? Not just one doctorate, but two doctorates.
It feels good. It feels good. I knew when I was 13 that somewhere down the line this would happen. So in my 30s it happened, it's interesting. The three, there's some symbolic, we need to edit that. Symbolic, it's symbolic.
I love it. I love it. Listen, we're already having fun and we're not even a show. This is amazing.
I was trying to use a big word, it didn't work out.
Okay, that's okay. Now, what inspired you to, go on this journey to becoming a doctor? I mean, it's no easy feat. To become a doctor requires, lots of years of studying and writing and research. What was the motivation?
So I got it through it's a religious doctorate. So it's actually shorter than perhaps an academic or professional doctorate. But the motivation was the kind of work that I do. So if you look at it, it's in pastoral counseling and religious studies. And so because I just have always had a niche interest in mental health, religion, and abuse that's been caused by religious communities, it's something that I work with all the time anyways. And so once I launched my business in 2020, I saw it so much and there was such a need. And I was like, people are looking at me and thinking, that's cute. She just has a master's. But I was like, it won't be cute when I have two doctorates. So I figured out how to do it. I found a really good program that just suited my work schedule, my life, and I did it. And it was really enjoyable. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the world. So now I can actually try to make some change, and they won't be like, how cute, she just has a master's. Now that's how cute, she has two doctorates.
I love it. I love it. And it reminds me of, the segment for this show. I titled it Unapologetically Me. And you
Mm.
know it, right? The title is so fitting. And, part of the story that I want to dive into is around self-care and love and some of the hate that you yourself have had to endure online. And just a context for our audience, you are what we call a social media influencer. And so you have been able to inspire millions of people, not just on Instagram, but TikTok and all of the other platforms. But with that comes hate. How have
Mm.
you been able to navigate that?
You know what? I kind of just was thrown into it. The first time I went viral was on TikTok in 2020, or was it 2021? That was the first time I had gotten a million views, and I had never had that many eyes on me that I knew of. And so, the comments were so bad, so bad. And then I realized that in the online space, there isn't really a red line that people aren't willing to cross, right? Like you
Mm.
would think that humanity, there would be like places that they just like won't touch. No, that doesn't exist. And they want reactions out of you. They want to hurt you. And the more you are unconventional, the more you are unorthodox, the more people want to come at you because you are now defying their levels of comfort and whatever they have been taught a woman like me should be placed in with all of my intersections. And so I really had to develop a business plan because I recognized how important it is to have your business on social media in this day and age, but how important it also is to have peace of mind and self-care. And so I hired a social media manager. That was quite the investment, but it had to be done because I can't read my comments anymore. So she does a lot of that for me. God bless her soul. And before and after I check my social media, because sometimes I still see the comments because there's a lot, I do some social media boundaries. So something that I just did before this, actually, and before I checked my social media before this, was I did a 5 minute meditation. And it was so quick because I just had 5 minutes, but it was so good. And something that I've been doing research on that maybe the audience could benefit from is the benefits of cold compress and warm compress when you are just trying to shift your mental states from doing one activity to the other. So after I checked my notifications, I knew I had to get ready to talk to you, but I had literally 5 minutes to spare. And so there's something that I have created that is so easy. You take like ice cubes, if you have ice cubes, and you boil water as you would with any kind of herbal tea, but you actually pour it into the ice cubes and you freeze it. And then while you're doing your meditation, you rub this on your face. And it's going to start melting on your face, and it's herbal, right? So like I had like chamomile tea that I put in. I have plants, so I have like aloe vera that I put in. You can do whatever as long as it doesn't irritate your skin. But what that was doing was self-care and like a cold compress. And so it was giving me different temperatures while I was listening. And you might be able to listen that I have actually 396 hertz right now playing in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. So that's an example of self-care that is really practical that I've started doing to really get my mind out of what I saw online. Because the thing about online is people don't really give you trigger warnings often. So you can see anything and it could trigger you. And sometimes you don't even know what your triggers are until you get triggered.
Oh my
And so
goodness.
it's really important to have your own personal media boundaries. And so that's something that maybe your folks can do. That's something I've started doing, and it helps a lot. And it tightens your face.
Okay. Oh, okay. I think I might have to try that.
Yeah, yeah, because it's ice. So it, like when I was like putting my makeup on, I was like, oh, it's tight. So yeah, that's a very practical example that I just started of self-care.
That's a beautiful self-care tip. And I love that you're talking about, setting boundaries when it comes
Mm,
to social media. And setting boundaries could extend into your everyday life, right? It could be
yes.
work, it could be, wherever, right?
Yeah.
No limits are, and setting those boundaries, I think, are critically important. But
Mhm.
the other part of that is the self-care piece, right? You set your boundaries. How do you now get yourself into a place where you can bounce back, or where you can get to a stage where you need to perform and do what you need to do? So I love the fact that you were able to share that with us.
Yeah, yeah, I'm all about practicality. I'm all about finding affordable ways to do self-care because I think when people think of the concept self-care, they think about like spas and massages and like that is part of it. But we recognize that in this day and age, not everybody can afford, those expensive forms of self-care. But you can go to the dollar store and get an ice cube. Sometimes people give it for free on Marketplace. And most of us have some kind of herbal tea that's probably expired in our cabinet that I don't encourage drinking, but you can boil it and use it for, there's so many masks that you could do. There's hair masks, there's face masks. But yeah, this is a very affordable and really not really time consuming way to shift your mental state. And especially with social media, I think it's so important because we are so accustomed to just keep scrolling all the time. And it can be great because it can connect us to people that are like-minded, inspiring people, but it can also trigger us. And I think if people are cognizant of that, then they can apply these practical ways.
Yeah, I love that. And the other piece about self-care that I know you've been really, advocating for strongly is just getting outside in nature, and whether it's
Yeah.
grounding, right? Can you talk a little bit about how beneficial that is for you?
Oh, so beneficial. So I really look forward to the spring and summer months, especially in Canada when the snow is gone and hopefully stays that way, hopefully. And because there's so much science behind earthing and grounding, just the simple measure of walking on the grass bare feet or, taking, a cloth or anything that is like a curtain or something that you could just put and just lay on the grass or sit on the grass. There are so many articles and studies done on just how that can shift your mental state because you're becoming one with nature, you're touching it, you're smelling it, you're feeling it. And again, it's cheap, right? A lot of people can do that in their backyard, or they can go if it's walking distance or if it's, accessible. There's a lot of parks, but really just connecting with nature. Once again, it takes you away from social media, it takes you away from work and responsibilities, and it puts you in a place where it's just different. It's on a different time. You know, nature is on its own time, and we can learn a lot from it. I've learned a lot from it, and upon also doing the whole plant thing, that's been helpful because I was finding that I was getting really upset when I wasn't able to earth and ground. And so I was like, I need to have a greenhouse. That's hence. So I started doing this plant thing where what I started doing, and it may look really expensive, but it's not because I frequent on Facebook Marketplace and I'm constantly looking for free plants. And, once in a while you'll get them. And then they need rescuing. So you figure out how to rescue them and then you propagate them. So you cut them and you create new plants from them. And so that's also been a really cheap way of me also doing the nature thing, but inside my house.
I
So
love.
that's also, you don't need to have a green thumb. I didn't always have one. You can develop it.
Okay, practice makes perfect. I like that, and I love that
Yeah.
you're bringing nature indoors. So you can create space for yourself. I like that. Now, I want to really touch on. I won't say a heavy topic, but you're a Muslim woman, and some of the hate that you have received, centers around that, even from your own community, around
Yeah.
how you present yourself. How do you find the courage to be authentically you, and while empowering other young girls to be authentically, themselves?
Yeah, so with the content creation and intersectional work that I do, I like to call it trauma informed. So when you recognize that you're trauma informed, that means you recognize that the way people show up to the world is a result of them either still being in their trauma or finding their way out of their trauma, which means the way people talk, the way they walk, the way they dress, everything is fixed on that. With that kind of a perspective, we cannot all look the same. It doesn't matter what communities we come from. It's just unrealistic, in my opinion, to expect everybody to look the same. Now, when you look at faith-based communities such as Muslims, we're looking at 2 billion people, right? Roughly. Not all of them are going to practice the same. Not all of them are going to live the same. And for me, it's really important to have that understanding. And also, you know, I think that religion is personal and spirituality is personal. And there are facets of faith that appeal more to others than somebody else. And so for me, it had to be a lot of work. Then that also led to the doctorates as well in a religious context for me to recognize why is it that people feel the need to oppress in the name of religion? Why do they need to oppress in the name of spirituality? And across faith systems, we see this happening. And so, that is, again, the abuse that's caused, and the trauma that's caused, which then either pushes people away from faith or it makes them act in accordance to faith that they don't actually believe in. You know what I
Wow.
mean? And so then they see me and I don't look like what they expect, but I actually have the knowledge and I actually have the practice. And so, there's always going to be people that will have an issue with everything you do. But what's been cool is I've been able to connect with like-minded people who are like me in that they also are okay with standing out and practicing in whatever way works for them.
I
Because
love.
with me, I'm like fully convicted in what I do, and I'm very intentional in what I do. And a lot of these people can't say the same.
We are going to take a short break again and pick up the conversation about being practical in doing what you do and being authentically you in whatever space you step into. So we're going to
Okay.
take a short break and we'll be right back with In Conversation with Alethia with Sogand Zakerhaghighi. Dr. Sogand. Welcome back to In Conversation with Alethia. We're going to pick up the conversation again with Dr. Sogand Zakerhaghighi. And we left last on break talking about religion and just being authentically you in whatever space that you're in. So, again, let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, so what I was trying to say is I have found that the people who are trolling in the name of religion or causing harm and abuse in the name of religion, I feel that there needs to be some self-awareness work and some healing work. Because for me, as somebody who's fully convicted in the way they show up to the world, it does not bother me when people do it differently. As long as they're not harming anybody, it doesn't bother me. I would never go out of my way to shame the way somebody dresses, although they are said religion or said spirituality. I feel like when people are doing that, there needs to be some healing work of their fixed beliefs about themselves and the world, because otherwise, there's no reason for the way somebody's practice, which is very personal, because we all believe that it's, there's a relationship between you and a higher power that's personal, right? There is no need that your relationship or somebody else's relationship would bother me, unless, of course, I lack self-awareness and I lack intentionality. And therefore, I'm like looking for reasons to be upset at others instead of doing the healing work. So I just think for anybody who's going through this, and if there's anybody causing harm online or offline to you in the name of faith, I always say that maybe check in with yourself just to like validate yourself and soothe yourself. That does that person actually know what they're talking about? And do they actually know themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this a way that they want to control others because they don't have control over themselves? That's all I'm saying.
That
And
is
that goes for any faith and any spirituality because, we know from a mental health perspective that you only project like that when you're unhappy within.
Oh my gosh, that is really deep, Sogan. And, I love the seriousness of this because oftentimes you'll find people start to judge and, they'll be very happy behind the keyboard or their phone to text a comment. Before you
Yeah.
comment, go inwards, right? Reflect and think
Yeah.
what it is that you're so upset about that you feel the need to post a comment or say those hurtful words. So thank you for sharing that. And the other side of it that I love is how you as an individual, and I want to equate it to putting on a coat, right? So how do you armor yourself for the world around you? So if it's winter, you're going to put on a coat. If it's summer, you're going to take off a layer. So how do you prepare yourself as an individual to deal with the trauma, the negativity? First of all, others should stop, but how do you, put that armor on? How have you put that armor on to be able to equip yourself in this world?
Good question. Connecting with nature.
Ah,
Truly,
okay.
that's been so important for me. Stepping away from humans. And I've been going to dog parks. I don't have a dog. I've been going to dog parks and connecting with dogs. I've been going to farms, connecting with farm animals. I have a cat, the love of my life. I take naps with her, and I've literally turned my house into a greenhouse. I have a lot of plants. And whenever possible, I go out and I meditate in the woods, in the trees, and just really spending more time with nature and with animals than I have with humans because that's been the only way for me because I see so much goodness and purity and innocence when
Mhm.
I'm around animals and nature that is lacking in a lot of human beings. Because the thing is, nature and animals, they just operate differently, They don't have the same malicious, manipulative ways that humans can have because they don't, unless they need something, right? Like an animal's only going to freak out if it needs something or if you scare it. Or nature, like the tree's not going to fall on you unless there's like a natural reason. It's not going to be like, I don't like your outfit. So while you're underneath me in my shade, I want to fall on you. It doesn't work that way. But humans will. Humans will find ways to just be toxic. And the thing is, a lot of these, actions that humans do online, particularly, don't have immediate consequences. There are criminal codes for cyberbullying, but it costs time and money and energy for somebody, and they might even get exhausted in the time to pursue maybe a case against somebody. So that's why these people that do this seemingly get away with what they do, but they don't really get away because, as all physicians say, like physicists say, that energy is always transmuted. It is forever. It doesn't go away. So the hate that you're putting out somehow will come back to you. It
That
may
is
not be through a legal case. It may not be through a criminal case. It will come back to you. And so that's like the biggest joke is that they think that they're invincible. But all it's going to do is feed into their negativity and make their life even worse. So, they may think that they aren't causing harm to themselves by being anonymous or, leaving the comments, but energy comes back. It will always come back. And that's not even a spiritual thing. That's not even a religious thing. That's literally science. Like Energy doesn't disappear.
Mhm.
It takes different forms and it comes back. So they can't deny that it's going to come back.
I love that. I love that. And, it goes to, when we talk about just, associating with like-minded energy. So when you associate yourself with positive, forward-thinking people, then you'll learn a thing or two. So that's a good tip. I like that.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course, I also do talk to people like yourself and people who I feel like are actually doing good for the world and actually using their strengths for the world. So if I'm not with animals and nature, I'm talking to the people that I have vetted and I feel like they are, they're mindful of their energy, so then I'm mindful of having them in mind. So that's very important as well.
I like that. And speaking of people, part of who you are, part of, what makes up Sugan is your clinical work. So the work that you're doing, counseling and providing mental health service for individuals. Can you talk about how you got into that field?
Yeah, so I have been doing mental health work for like 10, 15 years in different spaces. Currently, I'm not doing counseling. I did counseling when I did my practicum, and I did counseling back in the day. Currently, I'm doing mental health coaching, and it's a little bit different. And I'm pursuing registration as a psychologist, which is this like long road. So I would like to go back to counseling at some point, but currently I'm doing mental health coaching and webinars and workshops. And it's all about trauma-informed care, truly, and just, teaching forms of integrity, acceptance, intersectionality, and actual inclusion from a trauma-based perspective, and recognizing that because of trauma, people will show up to work in a specific way. Because of trauma, people will not be able to submit their assignments. Once we recognize that all of us, especially in today's age, with all of the socio-political things that are happening, with inflation, with recession, like there's just so much happening. And we're still in a pandemic, even though it's not as much talked about, it's still a thing. Obviously, there's a lot of trauma that's just collective and because of all the trauma that's in the air, naturally it's going to affect us all. So the more we recognize that, the more we can operate at in a compassionate way. So this has been my work for years, but honestly it's becoming more crystal clear now for me.
Okay, that's amazing. And sorry, I am distracted because there's a spider in the studio keeping me company.
Oh.
See, this is talking about being dynamic. I love it.
That's funny. When I was
So,
doing my makeup, there was a spider in my makeup drawer, and I'm like,
oh,
bro,
love it.
really?
So maybe it's a sister spider to your spider.
Perhaps it's energy. See?
Energy now. So I want to talk about a little bit about, you talk about intersectionality and trauma-informed care, and I want to dive into what those two topics mean. Can you
Yeah.
break down what intersectionality means? Because it's a term that we've all heard, especially in the DEI space.
Yeah. So in the mental health space, intersectionality means that it's not a one size fits all, essentially, right? It's your upbringing, socioeconomic status, culture, ethnicity. I mean, we recognize that there are systems of oppression in place, and these systems of oppression have harmed people and continue to harm people and need to be worked out, right? And so recognizing that people don't have the same access to resources, they don't have the same access to fundings, they don't have the same access to knowledge. And so with that being said, we can create care plans if you're in the mental health work, or create opportunities with that in mind that are actually intersectional, that will actually, you know, cover the masses rather than a specific group of people and then just calling it intersectionality.
I like
You know what
that.
I mean?
And then when you talk about trauma-informed care, so is that more focused on, for example, maybe you were abused as a child, and so you're now
Yeah.
able to, okay.
That, but also there's different kinds of trauma, right? There's the everyday trauma of, you have a hostile work environment, but you still need to make money to be able to eat. Have a strange relationship with a family member that's continuously causing trauma. You're breaking generational curses in that you are the only one in your family that's breaking dysfunctional mental health patterns. Those are everyday traumas. Or there is, other kinds of trauma that perhaps that happened one time in your childhood and you're still having nightmares about it. So then that impacts your hygiene and your eating. So trauma, we all have trauma, different kinds of trauma. We all also have privileges that we should be cognizant of. And so trauma informed care takes into account the privilege that one holds in society as for what access to resources they can have, and then the trauma in how that impacts how they show up to the world. So trauma informed care means looking at all of that, looking at as the individual as a package rather than just how they show up in a 15-second clip on TikTok or in a 2 13-minute segment interviews with Alethia. So it's important to recognize that people are so much more than just that one snippet that you got of them. And so are you, right? You're so much more than what people see on TV. And I know her personally, so I know she's amazing, just saying. But you're so much more than those like snippets. And so if you can recognize that in others, hopefully then people can recognize that within themselves. The whole purpose of everything that I do is to create compassion for yourself and then again transmute that energy outwards.
Beautiful. I love that. And, when we talk about trauma, I can't help but share my own trauma. So the things that I've learned, the things that I've experienced in this world, somehow, somewhere, I think I am protecting my child or my children, but I'm really just passing on that trauma because I am putting my fears into them. So that is another way of talking about trauma, which is so
Yeah.
powerful. We have really about 30 seconds left of this episode, Sogand, and I want to just wrap it up in 30 seconds or less. What's next for you?
More workshops and webinars. If anybody wants to talk to me about collabs, consultations, is that okay if I give them my website or
We
my email? My website doesn't exist, sorry. My email is wellnesswithsogand@gmail.com. Because of Alethia, you can access me for a free consultation. Talk to me.
Okay, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this inspiring conversation with me, Sogand. It has been amazing. And until next time, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.